Oh boy. How's everybody doing? Good. Doing good? Okay, we get after lunch, and I know they have ice cream sandwiches, everyone is on that sugar, and then we go to data and analytics, and then we say, oh, well, here we go. We'll keep it interesting for you. We only have about 30, 35 minutes, so we'll just jump right in. But let me give you a little context as to what I do. So I have an overly elaborate title, Global Program Manager of Customer Analytics. What does that actually mean? I actually wear, as many Googlers, multiple hats with what I do. I'm part researcher, part analyst, part marketer, part developer, although definitely not up to our engineering standards. I also tell a lot of stories. I'm also part storyteller. And we're not talking about fantasy or fiction here. What we're talking about is the story of what's happening across individual businesses and individual verticals, industries, entire ad channels, and trying to understand exactly what's happening. Now, the language that we use, all this data, we're familiar with this, but at times it can almost be overwhelming, right? We have so many different systems and so many different metrics that we can look at, but what we really have are not stories, we have individual words. So we might look at something to say, well, how are our conversions doing, or what's time on site, or what's engagement, or how many people do we have following us on a social network? It tells us something interesting, but it doesn't necessarily tell us what we should do next. So it's almost like if I told you something, just picked an individual word and said, the World Cup. And I said, Argentina. Well, okay, that's interesting, but what happens? Should you be interested? Should you care? How do you act based on that information? Now, for a lot of us, we wish that some of these systems, these BI platforms, these CRM systems that we put in, would answer these questions for us. That's the holy grail, that these systems would be in place and tell us exactly what to do. But they're not. So instead, what we get to work on is work with individual advertisers to figure out, well, what are the stories of what's happening? And be able to share some guidance as to what's happening across the broader market. Because if you're not able to use data, then what are you using as a basis of your decisions? So you have one case, just to show you how this problem is, only about 6% of company decisions are actually made using data. Which makes me think that there's more decisions being made for an average company using either alcohol or intuition than any of the data that we have. But if you went to a company and you said, well, what type of company are you? And then it's quick to say, well, we're a data-centric company, right? Because saying that we're an alcohol-centric company doesn't make sense. Now, we don't know what exactly that number is, but I can tell you on the intuition side, it's upwards of 54, 56% of all marketing decisions are just made on how we feel. And these are big companies. This survey was done actually about 350 marketers. So this is a problem. Now, it's not because these companies don't care or respect data, but the question is, how do they turn it into a story? So that's what we're going to cover over the next half hour. Is we're going to talk about, first, a few frameworks that you can use to build these stories with the data that you have. We're going to talk about some of the tools that we have that can help improve those stories. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what some of those plots or those chapters would look like of that story. So if we were sitting down together after this session, you're going to say, okay, well, what do we want to write about? What's interesting? I'll give you a few ideas, just some good starting points. Now, of course, with every presentation, there's a lot you can add about your own business, what your business strategy is, where you want to go, who your customers are, who your competitors are. So we don't want to write that entire story for you. And even throughout the course of this entire presentation, it's not designed to be prescriptive, to tell you this is everything you need to follow. But what it's designed to do is to inspire you with new ideas about what you can do around measurement and around data to get better performance. And what we're hoping is at the end of this presentation, you take what's important to you, what resonates with your business, the things that you're trying to do, you bring that back. You write your own story, and then you come back to us, and we'll help you finish it. Now, to get started, I'd like to start with these frameworks. I wanted to start with something really, really cutting edge, but in order to get a good sense as to where we came from and what we're doing, we actually had to go back about 15 years. 15 years to what measurement on the web used to be. That was largely by volume. Now, I could explain to you what this means, but I have an image that might actually bring back more experiences and more feelings than anything I could convey. How many people remember hit counters? Right? You remember these? They used to be, sometimes you get like the odometer style, sometimes you get the neon green ones at the bottom of the page. You remember what they were. And this used to be on every single web page that you visited about 15 years ago, and everyone used to say that this was the standard of performance measurement. Believe me, this was actually from a press release back in 1996. They said that their website received 762,000 hits, the web standard for measuring traffic. Now think about this for a second. Somebody comes into your office, and maybe they're interviewing for a role, and you say, well, how do you judge marketing ROI? And they said, well, I looked on your website, I didn't see a hit counter there. What are you going to do? I'd kick that person's ass out of my office and be like, "What? Get out! You're clearly not involved with things, right?" And then people come in and be like, "Well, what's happening here? Can you believe that he wants to go and just measure some arbitrary number that's just going up and saying this is how we're going to measure ROI?" It's ridiculous. We've moved past that. We're better at making decisions, right? But here's the problem. Then you're going to turn around and you're going to load your social media dashboard and do the exact same thing. And that's the problem with measurement, is that sometimes we go after the story that's easy, right? And that's the foundation. There's a joke about companies in Silicon Valley where 3 guys go out, they open up a bar, 1 million people attend, nobody buys anything, and the bar is declared a success and given a $2 billion valuation, right? Because it's easy, because we look at this volume and we say, you know what, we don't exactly understand what this volume is worth to our business. We don't know how to translate it. The same with social media, but how can volume be a bad thing? We just have to figure out how to convert it and how to monetize it. And you put a bunch of smart people in the room, eventually we'll figure this out, right? But that's a strategy. And it's almost like a socialite strategy, where you're going out every night, you're getting dressed up, you don't know exactly what you're trying to do. You just figure that if enough people see you, that opportunities will come your way, and you'll be successful. And then the pinnacle of your business is more or less getting a reality TV show, marrying Kanye West, even though you provide nothing of any value. We can move past that, and we did, and we said, you know what, we can do something better. Instead of just going out and measuring how many times we go out, what if we went out with a specific goal? Like, what if we went out and we said, I want to meet somebody, or I'm going to get a phone number, I want to get a date, I want to find a spouse, whatever it is. Relationship metaphors work wonderful with this. And then the only difference is we're going to put it more around people spending money. So we're going to set these conversions, these goals around people that are booking travel or buying our products. And that's wonderful, and that's what we've been doing ever since. Is that we set these goals, we set these conversions, and then we set targets and we optimize as much as we can to get the best performance. And that's not a bad thing to do. The problem, though, is that it doesn't answer all of our questions. And we're finding other opportunities. So for instance, we had someone come to us on the education side to say, well, are we actually measuring the right things? So on the education side, some of you may be aware that they track leads, how many people are interested in a program. That's what they use to optimize. That's their conversion. What we found out through a study was that the average person is going to fill out that lead, that metric of success, for 3 or 4 other competitors before they decide. So that means only about 25% of their conversion data is actually helpful in terms of optimizing and bringing more people in through their doors. There you have the case. How many people have asked this question with mobile? Say, I'd love to invest more in mobile, but the conversion rate just isn't there. How do we optimize? How do we get it up? It's a tenth of it. I'd like to invest, but I'm doing these CPA calculations and they don't make sense. So what do I do? We all know, when I was looking at people before this session, I saw how many people are on mobile devices, and it's kind of funny. We have our mobile device here, and we're like, oh, we're using it for everything. Should we invest more in it? Nope, can't prove that it actually works. Well, how do we do that? How do we answer this question? So the other one, what happens if there's metrics or signals that could point towards the overall health of your business? So here's an interesting study. Bain came out with this a couple of years ago, where they found out that over the course of about 5 years, 50% of your customers will abandon your business and not come back. They're lost. Which means you now have a smaller market to go after. But usually those problems, we don't think about those if we're just focusing on acquisitions, right? What we're focusing on is just more people, more orders, not the service and support that comes afterwards. So if somebody has a poor experience, they don't get their product in time, they're looking for it. That's going to make it more difficult to acquire more customers, more expensive to acquire more customers. How do we close that loop? Now the problem that we run into is that all of this is caused by just looking at this individual interaction, knowing that there are, and usually for retail, about 3 or 4 interactions that will happen before somebody converts, and usually there's going to be things that happen afterwards, and what we're doing is we're focusing entirely on this step into saying all we care about is the stage where people spend money. So if there's 3 or 4 interactions they have before they decide to buy your product, we're looking at them saying, well, we don't care about those. We want, what are these? Are these the brand keywords that we want to buy? We get the request, like, buy as many brand keywords as we possibly can. But how do we justify the investment of things that are happening up here? Or how do we justify looking and measuring at the traffic that happens after that purchase and driving them to the next stage? This is the problem. This is what's forcing a change in the way the companies measure and the way the companies build their marketing strategies. Now, it's not to say that companies can't be successful focusing that. In fact, if we go back to that relationship analogy, and we say put a whole bunch of people in a bar, see who's going to meet people, some people will be successful with this pursuit. So just going up to somebody and saying, this is what I want, and building that relationship. So there's a few people, say, if a celebrity or a movie star walks in, right? Everyone's going to know who they are, what they stand for, because they have the strongest brand. They don't need to build that relationship. They don't need to try to coerce them and get them to buy a particular product or be interested in them because everyone knows who they are and people will run up to them. Or then you have that second type, those people who, maybe they're a doctor or a lawyer, they drive a really nice sports car, maybe they have a unique product, something that the people there want, and there's only one place they can go. There's no need for that relationship. Or in the third case, the other group that's successful, and we can just speculate what this metaphor is, if you have the lowest price. It makes us feel bad, it makes us feel dirty, but if you're in that category, people are going to come up to you and just buy from you. They don't care about the site experience. They don't care about the relationship you're just offering. But how many of you really want to play that game? Right? You really don't. So the opportunity that we have in front of us with all this data is to organize it in a way and a structure that instead of looking just at how many people come through or looking at how many times they do what we want them to do, is to actually look at that entire relationship that we have with them. To take that story, moving away just from looking at spending money, to say, let's look at that entire path as to what happens. How did we drive them to that initial conversion? And then what happened afterwards that brought them back? To connect those data points together. Now, when we start to do that, the questions that we're interested in change dramatically. So we go from a model where we're saying, well, how many orders do we receive, to how many customers do we actually have? And think about that for your business for a moment when you're wondering, how many customers do you have? I'm not talking about how many people in your CRM database or how many people in your email list, but how do you define customers? If I buy from your business once and then I don't buy for a year, do you still consider me a customer? If I don't buy for 3 months. So those definitions are important, and that's the changing mindset that we're starting to see. And we're moving away from what an average CPA was to looking at what that entire path was. How much are those customers likely to spend over their lifetime, CLV? Also, how much do those customers cost over time? If they're clicking on a lot of marketing ads, we can't just look at the last click and say this is how much that acquisition was. Or the other area that we can also look at is, instead of the traffic sources, what customers are the most profitable? So instead of saying someone was driven by email or social media, just saying, is that customer profitable and what makes them profitable? Now, when you do this, you stop focusing on volume. And like this company, who's actually a bank in the US, they're focusing more on who the valuable customers are. The 10, 20% of their customer base that at times can spend up to 80% of their overall revenue. They want to focus on those. Let their competitors fight for everybody else. But the only way they get to that position is looking beyond just a single click, beyond a CPA. Now, if that's the framework, the question is, how do we start building this? Where do the tools come in? Now, I'm going to give you some ideas from Google Analytics. If you're using Core Metrics, if you're using Omniture, Web Trends, please continue to use those tools. It's fine. But just don't miss out on these opportunities. We'll cover it within the context of GA because it can do some really awesome things. If you want to use your own platform to measure, that's fine. Just make sure you can do these things and have these connection points. And the very first one is, if we really want to get to this stage where we can understand the customer journey, we have to be able to build the customer journey. So this is a starting point with a really ugly product name called multi-channel funnels. We released it a couple years ago. What we'll actually do is be able to piece together 5,000 interactions. So an individual customer, 5,000 of the interactions that they have with your business over a 90-day period. We'll give you that complete story. And not just on the channel level where we tell you that they came directly to your website or they came from an email, but all the way down to the keyword, the campaign, the display ad, the placement. We'll give you that granularity, how they interact, how often they interact. We'll capture 100% of clicks, regardless of where they come from, even if they're not on a Google network. And we'll add on to it things like YouTube impressions, so you can see if people viewed your ad and just didn't click. Or display ads, if people actually saw a display impression, we'll tell you where they saw it and how often they saw that impression and on what site. So we'll add that all in. And then we're going to go a little bit further, and we're going to say, well, we know there's things that are happening off the website. Someone may be walking into a store, somebody may be making a phone call, somebody's spending anything that they're doing to spend money. We actually now have, through a tool called the measurement protocol, where you can take these informations, these interactions, and send them directly up to the customer path. So if you send somebody a catalog, or somebody walks into your store, or they call up over the phone, you can join that with all of your other digital data. So it's not isolated to say, this is what's happening on your website. You can now turn these paths to say, this is what's happening in your entire business. These tools are entirely free, and we're even going to go a little bit further to say, well, we would like some context. Instead of just being honest people, can you give us any sense? So we're going to integrate information such as gender, age, interest and affinity categories. Everything that we use for targeting on the display network, we're now going to integrate directly into these stories, not only to give you a sense as to what people are doing, but start to tell you who they are. Now, we have a pretty rich story here, And we can do a lot with customer measurement, but you can also do some things on your end. So for instance, when customers identify themselves by logging into your site, by making a purchase, or by clicking on a unique email link, we can actually use it to start to tie together that ID. So we can't take any PII in, but we can take that ID in and assign it to that customer path. So if you have a customer named 12345, and that's what it is in your CRM database, we can integrate that directly with the path. So you can see it one-to-one. Now what this also does, and I know there was a question earlier which we'll cover, this also enables cross-device reporting. So as people identify themselves, if they log in on their desktop and click on an email on their mobile phone or their tablet, we can actually join those paths and those stories together. When you have that, the last piece that you can bring in is now that we have a unique identifier for what those customers, who those customers are, we can take any dimension that you have in a CRM system. Something simple as a spreadsheet, right? You may have what their customer lifetime value is, their total cost, how long they've been a customer, RFM, recency, frequency, monetary value. You can take all of that and bring it directly into GA. And be able to merge it one-to-one with who they identified. And what that turns into is we have now taken an analytics platform that looked entirely at conversions and now move them all directly to customer-centric measurement, where you can look at the people that come in to say, who are these people? This is a powerful tool and a powerful framework, and now I want to get a little bit into those plots. Well, what can we do with this? Because we've gone from having a lot of data to having even more data. What would we look at? What should we do? So we have a few opportunities, things that are worth considering, and the very first one is for a marketer, you generally have 3 roles. You can acquire new customers, you can upsell your existing customers, you can retain your customers. We're going to touch on some of those. We're going to start with acquisition. To actually go through them and to say, we're going to understand and invest in the best sources for new customers. If you don't want to do the work on the analytics side and you're just curious to say, well, what channel is going to bring us the best customers over time? There was a research study that happened to find out that it came from paid search. Now, this is public too, as well, if you want to take a look at it. If you don't, when you integrate this data, what we can do is we can build these reports that will tell you exactly where those new customers are coming from. So instead of looking at the last click, we can look at those very first interactions to say, what's driving awareness of those people? What has the highest likelihood of bringing those new customers into your business? We can combine what their customer lifetime value is, and we can show it all to you in a single interface and show you how those people are behaving and use it as a basis of segmentation, which is incredibly powerful because it tells you exactly where you want to spend your time and attention. So we can reach those very first introductory stages. And that's a great part, but then it raises a question to say, well, if people are going through multiple interactions, how do we develop a marketing mix that respects that? Right, so what do we do about people in between? How do we develop those relationships over multiple interactions? There's a study we did. Many of you may have seen it. It's been out for a little bit over a year now. But it's on the Think website, where we actually took a look at how different marketing channels help to drive consumers through the funnel. So what you see here all the way on the left, where you see display, these are channels that are very far from the conversion. So if you were to look from a last click perspective, these channels would look like they perform poorly, because that's not exactly where they are. So things like display, we found out that if 4 customers actually click on a display ad and eventually go to buy, only one of those will actually convert off of that display ad. The other 3 will convert off of a different channel. So we interpret that by saying, well, that's a higher CPA we don't want to invest. But that's exactly where we want to invest if we want to start driving people all the way through the funnel. We can't just cut it out and say people will find us when they're ready to make a decision. We need to figure out where they are. Now, we have this information. It's public. You can also segment it by vertical and by geo to get a better sense as to where channels fall. Or within tools like analytics, we can specifically tell you where your individual marketing channels fall in the entire path. So are you reaching customers, or are the only keywords that you're investing in all the way down here? And I say keywords because we can do this on the keyword level as well. So instead of looking at broad channels to say we need to invest in display to reach people upper funnel, we can actually generate something similar to this. Now this is a fictitious company. Hopefully no one's bought the domain and put something up there. But what we actually see is we can see how keywords drive demand at different parts of the funnel. So we can see how things like holiday gift ideas may be someplace that people will start when they're just trying to figure out what they want. And then they get closer to say, is it even a good gift idea? And how do these companies compare? And what are the reviews? And then all the way at the bottom, we usually see coupon codes right before someone's ready to make a decision. But we can tell you what that breakdown is. And what we see most advertisers do is that they say, well, what we're going to do is set different CPA targets. So we're not going to treat these terms that are really high upper funnel exactly the same that are ones really bottom funnel. So maybe sometimes they'll take 30% less of CPA there, give that a 30% higher target, and they'll adapt. Or if they really want to go all out, that's where attribution comes in. right? We have tools built into GA. We just acquired Odometry. It's to give you that specific weighting across each channel, across each interaction, to tell you how much it's worth and how incremental it was in driving that next conversion. Now, that's a lot of information. You start thinking, like, well, how do I get started on this? How do I start to organize all my channels and keywords? I may have thousands, millions of different keywords. And the idea is just to become comfortable with the concepts. The fact that these keywords do work in different ways. These channels work in different ways. And the starting point is simply to understand that story of what's happening and how they're performing for your business. That's where we start. Now, the next area that we want to explore, of course, is how do we develop these individual marketing channels to their strengths, instead of forcing them all to be almost like a last click. Now, we see that with display ads. So most display ads you come across are built to be very action-oriented. They have things where they'll say, buy now, here's a strong promotion. Some of them jiggle on the screen, which annoys the hell out of us. That's because display ads were designed to drive people to convert. But we actually found out, and there's some academic research supporting it, that display ads actually have a different role. In fact, this is one team out of Wharton and Carnegie Mellon where they found out that display ads actually have a significant impact on consumer behavior early on, during that awareness stage or even before a consumer enters into the purchase funnel. That's where they found out that display ads perform best. And they also found out that by serving customers display ads further and further down as they get closer to make a decision, you've probably seen these where you go to sites and one product, one company will follow you website to website, determined to drive that conversion. And I actually found out, as much as what we suspect, that if you go further down with display, it actually pulls people out of the funnel. Makes them less interested. Makes them feel like they're being stalked across the web. So we're starting to learn those behaviors not only with display and social media, but also mobile. Remember this screen we covered earlier? This example that I had here was actually deliberate. So American Airlines, this is their boarding pass. In a given year, I'm going to fly American about 70, 80 times. It's a lot of travel. And that application allows me to get a boarding pass, so when I show up late to the airport, which happens almost every time, I still make my flight. It shows me my frequent flyer information. It shows me promotions. The one thing I've never done on the app is to actually buy. Never actually bought a ticket through that application. So it provides value to me as a customer. But if they're only looking at the number of times I converted, they're going to be disappointed. It's likely that it makes me a more loyal customer. It makes me happy. It makes my flights more convenient. And if I didn't have it, I'd damn the airline and tell everybody how terrible it was. And we do this sometimes because we get mobile apps. We're using them. And you're like, this is a terrible experience. Why are they doing this to me? Why can't they build a new mobile app? It's because of what they're tracking. I don't have to take my word for it. I actually saw an interesting quote. The CEO of Priceline, Booking.com, actually had at a summit with Goldman Sachs. They asked him the same question. Say, well, what do you think about mobile? Should it be used to push people booking new tickets? And this is what he said. He said it's more importantly than a source of transactions, it increases the dimensions of opportunity in the relationship. That's exactly what we're looking for with mobile. It's a new area. We know the way that we engage with it. We know we have those apps open all the time, but we're not buying all the time. So when companies build apps that just force us to buy all the time, it decreases usage because they're missing out on the opportunity that it really has. And just if you're curious, like I say, well, that's good guidance. How has Priceline really been doing as a company if they're not focused on conversions and driving sales? And it turns out pretty damn well as a business. This is for someone that's selling largely a commodity product, right? Same hotel rooms that people can get anywhere else. So what we can now do with this customer-centric approach is that when we're trying to answer questions like, well, how do we look at the performance of a mobile app? We can actually run a segmentation to say, how are customers using our mobile app versus those that aren't? So what we can do is in that spreadsheet I showed you, we can actually upload to say, well, have we identified this person as actively using our mobile app? They participated in a campaign that we know. Have they registered on the app? Have they provided their email address? And then we can compare what their performance is against those that haven't. And we can actually form the basis of a control test to say, do these people engage and buy more frequently, visit our site more often, stay longer as a customer, instead of saying, how do we drive these people to buy more through this device? Because we're talking about conversion rates where they are. That's a monumental challenge just to push more people to buy versus looking at what difference it makes to your business. And that's the last plot line that I want to cover, is how do we actually pay attention to the signals that customers are offering? So as these are going through these journeys, they're sharing a lot of information. The products that they're interacting with, the marketing channels they're coming across. It's more detailed than just a one and done. So I'll give you an example. Say this was my conversion path, how I was converting. through 3 interactions and they decided to buy one of your products. Now, if you're looking at last click, how many people here would look at this ad interaction and assign that cost to me? It says 25 cents, maybe a brand click. It's all right if you do. That's how most people are doing it in the market. That's fine. But they'll say, this $2 click was wasted. This $1 click wasted. The 25-cent click got them to convert. And the request is, well, how do we get more of those and maybe turn off these because they're not driving the same way? When we change the way that we're looking at this, now we can look to say exactly how much my cost was as a customer. So my overall cost is $3.25 at that point. You can even aggregate this over a lifetime. And that might be fine. That may be very profitable for your business. How would you compare my performance against someone like this? Instead of going 4 interactions, they're going all the way down, and they're taking quite a bit more. It's more expensive to your business. But from the perspective, it'd be very easy to look at that same customer and say, 25 cents, that's how they converted, that's where we want to invest. Now we can look at how customers are different based on how many marketing clicks they come across, and we can also make decisions to say, if we expect the average customer to convert after 3 or 4 interactions, that's when we want to give them the promotion. That's when we want to change our behavior. And in some cases, we could even say, you know what, instead of giving them the offer at that 4th, maybe we're going to put them on a negative remarketing list altogether and not invest in them anymore because it's not going to be profitable for our business. That's what this customer style story allows us to do. And I'll tell you, it happens too even with website content. So I'll give you an example. Jack Spade. If you go to their website, this is the experience that you get right away. Be a joiner, join our mailing list, get 15% off. I'm on their mailing list at least 15, 16 times. Why shouldn't I be? They're going to give me a coupon and a promotion. It's not actually driving anything incremental. It's giving me a discount. It's okay, so maybe some people are waiting for a 15% off rate. I'm sure a lot of people are just going because they're offering the coupon. Why wouldn't you take it? So you'll know that if you put a period in your Gmail address, it actually qualifies as a whole different email address and gets dropped into the same box. That's the way it works, right? And you wonder, you'll say, well, how complex are these paths? Is there really enough opportunity? So here's some paths of a retailer. So how many interactions with their customers? So we think that there's only 1 or 2 paid search interactions and they convert. There's some people that go a lot. Take this path all the way here at the top. Someone goes from a referral, like an affiliate program, to 9 paid search clicks, another 4, another 8, another 6, another 9, another 3, 1, 6, 8. Now do the math in your head as to how much you're paying for those clicks. Now think for a moment, did you treat any of these customers differently at any time across the stage, even though you have that information for your business? If someone came through and they were clicking on some really expensive ads, paid search, maybe they were display ads, maybe they're coming from affiliate programs, how did your business respond? Right? Some company systems do respond. And here's an excellent example of one company that I almost find inspiring. They said they actually build systems too that look for times where customers are unhappy with their products. It's that retention part of the funnel. Right? So this is actually a digital video product. We were discussing this yesterday. A digital video product where if someone comes to their site and they try downloading a movie and you get too much buffering or disconnects and you have to reconnect that video. Now technically it's a conversion. You bought a video. But they actually go a step further and say, you know what? Because you're having a bad experience, the likelihood that you're going to come back and be a customer again is pretty low. We're going to lose that opportunity. Our market's going to go smaller. So instead of having to wait for you to complain, what we're going to do is actually go out and give money back to those customers. It would absolutely hurt the conversion numbers. It would hurt the revenue. But long term, it makes sense. For context as to who does this is actually Amazon. So we have that ability now, not only looking at those individual conversions, but actually building out those paths to say, at what stages are customers unhappy? So setting goals, not simply to say spending money, but looking to say, well, what happens when they cancel an order, and how can we predict when that stage is going to occur? And we can respond, and we can say, people are coming in and they're searching for Find My Order. How do we respond differently? We can now do that because we're paying attention to it as opposed to saying, how do we get them to buy again? Which they're not likely to do. And then there's even the cases to say, well, customers are coming through. How do we even know what they're going to do? So say this is someone brand new to your site. You've never seen them before. You don't know their behavior. Like, do we pursue this person? Are they going to actually convert? Are they just wasting our time? Are they a competitor? Are they a bot? What do we do? This is where we come in to add a little bit of machine learning magic to the mix. So as these customer paths develop, as these tools develop, and we bring more and more data sets into the mix, we're going to help you make smarter decisions. So this tool in particular is called Smart Lists. It's built into Google Analytics, and what it does is incredibly powerful and really, really awesome. What it's going to do is it's going to look, at this entire customer path. It's going to combine 200 different variables about where they came from, what devices they're on, how they're interacting, other dimensions that you upload. And then it's going to make a prediction to say, based on the behavior, not the affinity segment, not the matched market, the behavior, do we want to reach that person? And it'll manage that list for you and begin engaging customers in that way. And all it takes to do to turn this thing on, this is how simple we made it. You just click the button. It's enabled. So those are the plot lines. Those are some of the stories. But the larger framework, which you have to decide for your business, where the opportunity lies, is what type of strategy you want to measure against. Right? You can do the volume, where you're going to look at the page views, the unique visits, the ideas of engagement, bounce rate, the social media metrics. You can do that, and that's fine. Or you can move and you can stay in the conversion-centric world where you're looking strictly at every order. And every day when you come back into the office, trying to fight for more of those orders. You can be successful with it. Or the awesome power of being customer-centric, where you can look at recency, frequency, the lifetime value of those customers, how they develop, and taking every interaction they have with you over digital to respond and to build a better experience. And then to be able to prove the value of what you're doing. My choice is try to focus on the customer. Do what makes them happy, build that long-term relationship. Find those that matter. Track the metrics that matter with them. 100,000 different metrics in Google Analytics alone that you could look at. We even showed some of them at the beginning, and that slide was built to be overwhelming where you're looking at this, like, what do I focus on? It's the same thing we see on analytics. So instead, focus on those things that matter. How many customers do you have? How much do they actually cost across their entire path? How much do they spend over time? Who are they? How often are they likely to come back? And then iterate on opportunities. You don't have to go back and tear up your entire business and say we're changing all of our measurement overnight. But start moving in that direction. Start with capturing the right data. Start with building that entire customer story. As much information as you can capture, online, offline, impressions, video views, all of it you can bring right in. We can integrate it, identify your customers, and build those joint conversion paths, those cross-device paths that'll let people know whether they're going from mobile, tablet, desktop, back again. And then build from that. Build those individual stories to say, you know what, we may not be able to shift to CLV right away, but let's see if we can build a better mobile strategy and we can understand how people are interacting with our mobile app. You go through, you don't find a difference between people using your mobile app and not. There's not enough value for them yet, and build towards that. Then expand and explore and to say, can we move the needle on new customers? Can we build a full funnel path so that people do convert more often and we can actually acquire them? And then you can work on the content strategy to say, how do you start developing your content so that everyone's happy with what's going on and that you can respond to what the consumers are giving you? Build that story. Then come back, anxious to know how it goes. We'll support you with more products, tools, and ideas. And everything we covered as well, all the resources are right here. The very first article, Customer Journey to Online Purchase, that's the benchmarks we discussed, where different channels fall. And by the way, we may just send these out because they're case sensitive. The second one is actually a book by a Wharton professor, Pete Fader. The basics is a quick read, probably an hour and a half, 2 hours. It's available on your Kindle as well, where he talks about those ideas of customer centricity and moving your business from a strategic level that resonates great with C-levels and CMOs. This is an article. A lot of this presentation content we put in an article on the Think website. The very last one is the nitty-gritty technical details. That's setting up this thing called universal analytics, which allows you to track offline conversions, allows you to track individual customers, allows you to track cross-device, and allows you to bring in your CRM dimensions all in one place. Contact information on the bottom. If you ever need an email, it's nhoyne@google.com. Just make sure if you have your account teams that they stay in the loop because they're always confused as to what's going on. But we love these conversations. We love these stories. So thank you.